Hi, my name's Steve Johnson from Akron, Ohio. This is my 1948 International KB-2 pickup truck. It was my father's, and we worked on it together. This truck was my dad's, and my dad's passed now. He passed in 2020, but it was his lifelong dream to have a truck, an old truck. Well, it took him till he was in his 80s before he got to have the truck. We finished the truck up in the spring of 2020. My dad turned 90 in June of 2020, and he passed that same year in October. But the truck was finished, and we did get to go to International Harvester Homecoming in Fort Wayne, Indiana. But my dad really enjoyed it. Him and I spent a lot of hours on the truck together, working on it, trying to find parts. There's parts on this truck from all over the United States. You're pretty much at people's mercy when they, have the parts, because if they have the parts, they're usually the only ones that have them. So you got to pay whatever they're asking. So some things we had to fix up and redo ourselves, like the front bumper was all rusted out and smashed on the one end, and trying to find another one. Went to quite a few places, and they were just so expensive, and a lot of them were remanufactured. So we found another one that was smashed on the other end, and I cut them in half, welded them together, and made one good bumper out of it. The engine that's in this is the same style, size, everything that belongs in the truck, but it's not the original one. The original one, the fellow that we had got the truck from had left the spark plugs out, and the cylinders filled up with water, and they just seized up in there. We tried every old man's trick of Marvel Mystery Oil and WD-40 and everything mixed up, trying to get them loose, but we ended up beating the pistons out with a block of wood and a mallet. When we got them out here, it had been already rebuilt, and it was 90 thousandths over. So the machine shop said you can either re-sleeve it or get a different engine, and to re-sleeve it was almost $4,000. And we started looking for a used one, and I found one on Craigslist in Johnstown, PA, just outside Johnstown. We got the engine from that guy, and it was in a vehicle that was stationed with the Coast Guard in Pearl Harbor. So the engine that's in this truck was in Pearl Harbor. It's a Green Diamond 214 engine. It's a straight flathead 6. They came out with the KB model in 1947, and this is a 48. That engine, we didn't do anything to it except put new points and condenser in, new plugs, nothing internally. She started up, ran, went right to an idle after sitting for 30, 40 some years. My parents did disaster recovery work with the Friends Church, and they'd clean up after floods and tornadoes, hurricanes, fires, things like that. And they would go and help people all over the United States put things back. He got this truck when he was on a disaster. It was the Van Wert, Ohio tornado, and they were rebuilding a barn. The truck was there. The barn was completely gone, and the truck was still sitting there beside where the barn was at. And my dad told the guy, he said, I've always wanted a truck like that. And the guy told my dad, he said, well, he goes, it's yours. And he meant it. He gave it to my dad. And the engine that we got in Pennsylvania, my dad was talking to the guy, trying to figure out where he lived. And my dad said, yeah, I know where you live. You go through this town and that town and over this hill. And the man says, how do you know my geography? And he says, well, we were there for the Johnstown flood, and we helped people rebuild their houses And the guy was so moved that he gave my dad the engine for free. And that's so much about my dad that I loved, was the example that he was, how he helped people. My dad really instilled in me a good work ethic, be a good example for people, help people out when you can. Having the truck just puts him in the forefront of my mind all the time. You know, those memories are in my head for good, and nobody can take those away. Hunting down the parts, the wood that's in the bed. We went to a sawmill out in Alliance together and hand-picked out the boards out of the pile. You know, we'd hold them up and trying to find the ones that had the most interesting grain in them and things like that. And the knobs on the dash were made out of plastic that'd crumble apart. So I told my dad, I said, what do you think if we were to take some of the wood that we used in the bed and I'll carve out the knobs and then paint the things on them, like choke and gas and the things like that on the front. He said, yeah, that's a good idea. So there was things like that. The wiring in the truck, we kind of thought it out together. My dad did things the right way, and he was a firm believer in God and what you give, you will get back. And that's not why he did it, but it's how it worked out with all the people that came along and gave him parts and gave him information. And that's what makes it such a good memory for me, is to be able to tell people about my dad and how much he loved people and helping other people. He was really good to me. He was a good dad. I learned a lot from him. And I try to be as much like him as I can.